Good morning, everyone. SandDAO Podcast 44. Today we have a special guest, Hervé Larren, spelled Airvey. And if you're looking at the dashboard, it's Airvey.eth, Airvey. He is one of the 12 delegates that was just announced 3-4 days ago for the Sandbox DAO. Today we'll be doing a meet and greet, and it will be a learning opportunity to learn about Hervé and how he wants to approach delegation, who is the best fit for as voters, and to learn about Hervé. Welcome, Hervé. Good morning to you.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me from YGG in Manila at the moment.
In Manila. So everyone so you're there. Are you on tour? Are you meet and greet?
Yeah, so I'm doing an Asia roadshow at the moment. So I went from started at Singapore 2049 to Hong Kong FinTech Week to then the DEF CON in Bangkok, and this is the final stop. So YGG Manila, and I'm in between also meeting a lot of members of the Sandbox family here in Manila as well over the weekend. So very excited about it.
Very good. Very good. And our disclaimer is we do not represent the Sandbox Game or the Sandbox DAO Foundation that I'm aware of. Do you represent the Sandbox DAO Foundation in any way, Hervé?
No, just as a delegate.
Just as a delegate. All right. So we are not your financial or legal advisors. Nothing we say is to be taken as financial or legal advice. When we say the word SIP, we mean Sandbox Improvement Proposal. When we say the word DAO, we mean Decentralized Autonomous Organization. And when we use the word SandFam, we're talking about the Sandbox community, those who participate in the people, product, and purpose of the Sandbox ecosystem. That ecosystem looks a little bit like this, where you have people everywhere from gamers to the Sandbox team. The product would be the game client, Vox Edit, Game Maker, Market, and the DAO. And the purpose would be not only what is spoken of in the white paper, but also how Sebastian Bourget, Arthur Madrid, both co-founders of the Sandbox, and Yatsu speak about the vision and purpose of the Sandbox. All that together equals the ecosystem. And for our purposes today, we're zeroed in on the people sector of the ecosystem, specifically the DAO delegates. Sandbox and Scoreboard have not moved because the DAO admin team has been hard at work getting the delegation system online, and we all started in May 28th via Medium article when the DAO was launched. September 10th, the DAO Sandbox DAO opened up delegation applications, and then November 13th is when the 12 delegates were announced. One such delegate we have here today, Hervé Larren, and I'm Lanzer, your host, president of the Metaverse Group. So we have two experiences, but that's not why we're here today. We're here to talk about Hervé. And Hervé, welcome. If you wouldn't mind, please. I have a little bit of your background here. We'll fill in the gaps in between. Born in France, went to school in Montreal, and also the United States. So you got your MBA, Master's of Business Administration from Columbia, and where you also attended the Harvard Business President program. Then
Yeah,
you
post,
go ahead.
yeah, yes, post MBA at Harvard Business School. That's
Post
correct.
MBA. There we go. That's a good word. Post MBA, Harvard Business School. Worked at LVMH, Louis Vuitton, Moet Hennessy. Very recognizable company. You also started your own Bitcoin mining company in 2013. I found a picture, I think on a news article, maybe Coin Telegraph, where you've got your hard hat on in the server room. You can see in the background all the what they look like ant miners. And 2013, so almost from the beginning, very close to it. From there, you assisted Grayscale during their hunt for SEC approval, which they eventually gained for their fund. And you've been in the metaverse since about 2017. And says you first heard about the metaverse through Decentraland's ICO back in August 2017. You built a gallery in Decentraland, so you're no stranger to building in the metaverse. And you're the first person ever to bid $1 million on an NFT, which was that Beeple that had over 5,000 different NFTs all bundled together as a collage. But what lasted 6 seconds or so before you got outbid, and the winning bid was $66 million. Million?
Yeah, 69 million.
69 million, which is quite a feat. So I'd say you were quite successful in kicking off a storm for raising the bar on NFTs. At least when you were describing it during your podcast with the gentleman whose names escaped me, was that the reason why it all started? You thought, hey, we need to raise the bar on this, and then decided to vote $1 million on it?
Yeah. So for the backstory, I was advising one of the largest neighborhood inside of Decentraland, and at that time it was pre metaverse times, pre Facebook launching the metaverse, and they actually didn't have any money at the time. So they said, we'll give you something, and that something ended up being an art gallery. It was actually two art galleries
Oh,
that they gave me. So basically, two parcels of land with galleries inside of a gallery area that had 80. And I was the first one to build that art gallery neighborhood. And when Christie's put on auction the Beeple, they knew I had a bunch of art galleries, and they says, well, we're putting an auction an image of Beeple 5,000 days, and since you have an art gallery, that you could be interested. And I said, well, what is the starting bid? And they said it's $100. So I said, okay, that sounds good. How much do you expect it goes for? And they didn't have a clue. So I ended up asking for a certain amount. They've raised my limit on the side. So when it actually went to $1 million, that was the limit that they actually gave me for that auction. But we all thought it was going to go for way less than that. And then after that, it started. But I think the interesting part is that I was the only one that they gave the video and the material to actually promote it. So when I went on the Crypto Banter show, interviewed by Ran, the actual video and information that he's showing is actually the official marketing material of Christie's to promote the first ever NFT auction. So that was the interesting part about it.
so, and how did you decide on $1 million? Was it like just the flashiest bar kind of set the tone?
Well, I thought about 100,000. That was my initial thinking about it. When you actually bid with Christie's, they ask for your financial, they ask for your passport, credit card, etc. It's actually a very serious process when you actually enter an auction. And through that, they had actually approved me for $1 million. And when I actually started to bid, pretty early on, my maximum limit was reached. So I was live on the podcast when I was actually bidding. So I actually did place real bids. It was a real auction and live. And since I committed to place some bids, I placed the bid till my maximum limit, which ended up being the maximum limit for the first couple of hours. And obviously, at that time, we even thought that we didn't even understand how I could reach the limit so early on in the game. And it's funny because in a matter of a couple of weeks, I went from it's crazy, somebody putting $1 million on an NFT, unheard of, and
Hmm.
then a couple of weeks after, so I was the craziest person, highest bidder, literally in the world for a couple of hours, and then a few weeks later, when it reached 69 million, everybody told me, I can't believe you low bid. That was such a low
Sure,
bid.
sure,
I knew it
sure.
was going to go so. It's really interesting to see especially in crypto, in a matter of a couple of weeks, how the momentum changes. It feels yesterday when Bitcoin was at $30,000 and now it's at 100,000, and we feel it's almost normal now. It kind of
Yeah.
synced in that. And then I was listening to an interview this morning that are talking about Bitcoin at 1 million. So it's actually interesting how fast people's perception can move in bull markets.
In some
The
ways, it feels like you were a victim of your own success on that one.
Yeah, and funnily, and something that I haven't really heard people talking about is actually during the time of the auction, the price of Ethereum went up 20%. So it was actually not only a bull market for NFTs, but in parallel to that, just the prices of Ethereum skyrocketed at the same time. So which was quite interesting as well, as far as the momentum. So not only we saw the price of the auction go up, but the price of the currency as well go up, because you could actually pay with Ethereum and Bitcoin as long as you had a US account. And it's funny because you had at the end two groups of people. You had the ones who were Ethereum maxis who actually won. Metakoven, who won, was an Ethereum maxi, and the guys who were more Bitcoin maxis, actually their pace started to slow because it didn't go up as quickly as Ethereum during the same period of time. So it was really the
Gotcha.
first time where I saw two different groups going at it, and ultimately the Ethereum group won this one.
Yeah. And would you say that's common for Ethereum and for Bitcoin to go up in different intervals?
Well, I mean, there's two ways to look at it. I look at the dominance of each of the of these currencies. Bitcoin was always around, or at least today is around 60%. Ethereum around 13, 14%, which was kind of the case as well. But I think obviously that entire NFT craze for a couple of months was obviously built on Ethereum. So at that time, Ethereum was just I would call it just the beginning of really the Ethereum bull market, or at least bringing it to that past $2,000. I think we were about $2,000 at that time,
Yeah.
which was considered which was the all-time high.
Yeah. Well, I was showing while you were speaking, I was showing the video podcast with Crypto Banter, the background, right when you're saying that it's live and showing the actual Christie's website and the bid, and there it is straight in the middle, 1 million bucks.
Yeah, with probably my eyes going all around the screen to try to understand what
Yep.
is actually
Yep.
going on. It took us a good 20 seconds to realize that I was the highest bid, to the point that Rand, the host, didn't actually immediately understood that I was the highest bidder, and was asking me to go above that bid. And I says, Rand, I'm the highest bidder. And so even him took him a little bit of time to understand what was going on.
Yeah, I think we were all just trying to figure it out. All trying to figure it out. So a bit of history on that. And then as you moving through the years, you joined Horizon Labs in 2021. Was it specifically to advise on ApeCoin, or did you start out as something else and then moved into ApeCoin?
Yeah, so when I created my company that actually has my name, Airvey, so I'm focused on tokens, and tokens in different ways. So at first, as you said, it was on the mining side of tokens. Then it was on the ICO side. Then after that, it was on the governance sides. And in that case, the part that really interested me was the creation of tokens. At that time, I was a holder of the Zen token, the Horizon
Ah,
Zen token, which was one of the first one that had a grayscale vehicle. And I had given my tokens to a few grayscale vehicles to go public. And the Zen token was one of the tokens that I was looking at. In fact, probably one of the first one to actually buy some Zen tokens, which was a fork of Zcash. And then from there, a new division opened, HorizenLabs, and I already had my company and took over HorizenLabs as one of the clients within my organization. And one of the first, literally after a few months, one of the first project that came knocking on the doors were the four founders of BOIC and said, "Hey, we're interested into." Um, Finding a partner to launch, which was at first the Metaverse. Actually, a funny story. It wasn't actually ApeCoin that was the first project. It was the Metaverse that was supposed to be launched first, then ApeCoin. And a few months before the launch, it turned around and ApeCoin became the
ah,
priority launch, followed by the other deed NFT drop, followed by the staking, and then the last four part was actually this year with the Ape Chain. So that was the Ape Chain. I was more hands-on as I was the lead on that project. But yeah, I had the chance to have a first a seat looking at what then became a little bit of a part of history within the space, and seeing a token going from 0 to 8 billion in 20 minutes was probably the most interesting thing in terms of value creations that I've seen.
and when I was running the numbers, I think from what I gathered, it reached all the way up to 1.3 billion. Uh,
Yeah, actually, so there's two numbers that came out. There's a number of $27 for a token,
mhm.
which would make it $27 billion market cap. I even heard that it hit for a fraction of a second $40, so that would have made it a $40 billion market cap. But that was during the price discovery of the first 30 minutes, and after 30 minutes, it kind of stabilized at $8. So I'm taking the $8 figure
Got it.
as I would say the average and probably the lowest average of it all. But on price discovery mode, the range is pretty wide. The other also interesting part is that the tokens, when it was presented to a lot of different parties before being launched, you couldn't give it away. I mean, people were just not interested in it at all. And seeing that it created $8 billion market cap, it was a good "I told you so" type of story afterwards.
Yeah, one of your you were on a podcast, and one of your old Harvard cohorts, you she said, "Yeah, you've definitely told us 7 years earlier that crypto was the way to go," and there you were 7 years later on the podcast with her.
Yeah, and
That
even it wasn't even like a big vision that I had. It's just that my mom is Venezuelan and asked me 10 years ago to send money to Venezuela, and the only thing I could send were bitcoins. And I thought, well, if it can solve my problem, it
hmm
probably can help millions of people around the world. Which was kind of the first case study of Bitcoin, which was remittance. Often an example that we take, and each time that I hear people talking about transferring value from one country to another, I always have the feeling they talk about my story, because that's literally how it started. So there were 50 countries back then whose economy collapsed, and I thought it could be useful for them. So that was mainly the stories that I was saying. I was saying, hey, you need to have a plan B in case of the economy of your country collapse. In my case, it was the richest country in the world in terms of oil, reserve of oils, more than Saudi Arabia. And I thought, well, if that country, Venezuela, can collapse, then it can happen to any other currencies. So it was a very much more of a insurance policy that I was suggesting to a lot of my classmates. And in a funny, not funny ways, the people who actually remember that story are mostly from Lebanon, and they
Oh,
said, well, if I would have heard, if I would have acted on this, we could have never imagined a few years after that our country would have collapsed, that the banking system would have collapsed, that would have saved us. So yeah, so it was always that narrative that I kind of like really kept, that you need to have 1 to 5% of your net worth as an insurance policy, and it turned out to be true for developed for up and coming countries, but also from developed one with inflation. So and ended up working, I guess, at this point for the entire world.
yeah. You definitely seem to be in that kind of entrepreneurial spirit of solving a problem. And first, you solved your own problem, and then evolved into how many other problems could I solve? But it looked like you and Christine, way back in the day.
Yeah, she's Lebanese, so she had that problem, that problems firsthand.
Yeah. So Horizon Labs led you to all sorts of solutions that you architected with ApeCoin, ApeChain. That started with the Metaverse, ending with ApeChain, and um, then you felt like your time at being on the advisory council, excuse me, the special council for ApeCoin DAO, that you'd achieved your purpose and it was time to move on to the next chapter. And did you go straight here to Sandbox, or did you stop somewhere else in between?
Yeah,
Didn't you
so
just you resigned not like a month ago?
Yeah, so there were two things. The first one, when I ran for special counsel, the purpose was really the launch of ApeChain. That was what I promised to work on and to deliver. I'm happy to say that we were able to create an AIP that cost zero to the DAO with the ApeChain, and it became the North Star of the DAO, to the point that now the entire focus of the DAO is actually on building ApeChain. So talking about return on investment, something that costs zero to the DAO and now becomes the purpose and the focus of a big part of the treasury, 100 million in that case is quite remarkable. Building the vehicle for zero and then having $100 million of fuel on top of it. I felt that AIP 378 was probably is going to be the AIP that was the best ROI ever in history for DAOs, bringing Arbitrum, Horizon Labs, and an entire community together at zero cost. It's probably unheard of, and so yeah. So I was very happy to lead that project, and once it's got ready to be unleashed, I felt that my job was done there. And then I had other clients that I had to really focus on, including Animoca Brands and the launch of their Bitcoin token, BLIFE. So this was the task. Feels like a while ago, but at that time, we felt that the price of Bitcoin was going to start to move, and we need to get ready to launch that token that creates that brings the Web3 on top of Bitcoin. So that is the focus. And at the same time, Sandbox asked me to be one of their verified delegates, and maybe to use some of the learnings that I had in the past, being on three DAOs simultaneously, and maybe there was some learnings there. And what excited me about it is that probably the task that I felt was going to be a good challenge from a delegation standpoint. And what excited me is to create the first East meets West delegations, and to have inside of one delegation representatives and token holders of all three continents, so Europe, US, and China. I had a chance to spend time with Sandbox China, and they were very excited about that. So when I floated the idea, and I felt that The Chinese community was very excited to delegate some of the tokens to me and kind of to reunite, the vision of a DAO and bring three continents together. This is what excited me actually to come and become a delegate for Sandbox and accepting the invitation of the Sandbox team.
And when you say East meets West and all three continents, that's one of the reasons why you're where you are right now, and uh, the extended travel itinerary you have is because where you grew up in France, and you also went to school in America and Montreal. Asia is not the place where you frequented as much, so you're trying to network and share the vision and everything that goes
Yeah,
into being a delegate.
yeah, exactly. I felt that often one of the I felt that I've accomplished everything that I wanted to accomplish in the previous DAO, and maybe the only thing that wasn't accomplished as far as I would have liked is to have stronger relationships in Asia. And the reason why it was simple. I didn't spend time here, and no matter how many Zoom calls and Telegram chats you have. I think it changes a lot when you go and visit Manila, Bangkok, or Hong Kong, and you spend time, face to face, and you get a feel for the different community. And it's also a form of respect to actually go see people and introduce yourself. And I felt that being French, I knew the Sandbox environment. I know where their offices are. I know I get a feel from it. Living in the US, I get a good feel from the US side of things. But Asia, I thought I had a feel, but I didn't. And now,
Hmm.
after spending a number of weeks here, now I can say that I feel comfortable within that environment.
What is it that you say you've learned or come to understand that you didn't before?
So I think there was two things. I think that we often think that we the markets are always the same, like the Asian market, the American market, the French, like we feel that it's the same, and we don't often focus on the cultural differences that there is. And I feel that that part was the cultural differences, understanding what works in a certain culture or another. I think that was a big one. The other one is just to know the individuals on a personal basis. I think that was probably the biggest thing. And third, really explaining the vision. And sometimes, especially if English is our first language, we have the impression that everybody just gets up to speed as quickly, but sometimes it takes a little bit of discussions and more emphasis. So I realized that sometimes with even myself as a French speaker, sometimes you need a little bit more time to understand a little bit better what the entire vision is, and not just assuming that if you shoot an email that everybody will get it at the first read. So
Gotcha.
I think that was important.
Gotcha. So creating the first East meets West delegation representing all three continents. And let's go to where your SandFam history began. I think you probably have one of the more interesting, not interesting, you have one of the more unique beginnings of SandFam. You actually, I don't think, became a holder right away. You, because you're from France, also you already knew Sebastian and Arthur Madrid. Did you meet them at their offices? Did you know about SandFam or Sandbox specifically? How did that take place?
So, so it was funny. So I always knew about the name Sandbox. I think everybody within the space knew about it. But funnily enough, I actually knew Arthur before knowing Sebastian.
Oh,
And I
oh.
and I feel it's almost a little bit the reverse. When I see most of the people, they usually know Sebastian and
Mhm.
kind of loosely know Arthur. But yeah, so I actually knew Arthur, and I knew Arthur not even through a crypto event. I had a friend of mine who was a DJ, who was having lunch in the south of France, and who says, "Oh, you're in crypto. I need to introduce you another guy who's in crypto." And and Arthur came at the lunch, and we were there, and I was explaining a little bit my story, and he was, oh my God, this is amazing, etc. And then and after that, I try to ask him, and you, what's your focus in crypto? And he said, well, I co-founded Sandbox, and I'm the CEO. So I got humbled very quickly within that first meeting, and we became friends at that time. It goes through Instagram friends, etc. And then over time, I actually got to know Sebastian way after that. So when I would go to the Sandbox office, it was mostly to see, or at least the few times, to see Arthur, and
Mm-hmm.
not Sebastian, which was quite interesting. And it never was. It was more about talking about the industry just in general, and then the only time where they really we had discussions were around when they were thinking about creating the Sandbox DAO. And I actually think I did the first draft of the DAO that I've sent to them. And after that, they've built it and created their own and internally. But yeah, so I was pretty early on in the conversation, and then wasn't involved for at least a year and a half, and then came back as a delegate.
So about when did you meet Arthur?
Oof.
Like, are we
Uh,
talking 10 years ago? Like, by
no, no, no. It
early
was
days?
4 or 5 years ago.
Okay.
5 years ago.
Okay, got it. And then you met Seb. So I've watched many videos of Arthur because I wanted to interview him one day, and early on when he spoke in Argentina and many other places, it was he was speaking, and then Seb was present, but it was mostly Arthur speaking, and then it seemed like about not long after Animoca um, got involved. Then they flipped, and Seb was speaking a little bit more. I think one of the last ones I saw of Arthur really speaking all the time was how he was getting into the blockchain. That they were now moving from 2D mobile now to 3D blockchain metaverse, and he was really excited explaining about what they were trying to do with the land and the white paper, and feels like such a long time ago, 2018. And then after that, I started seeing Seb speaking more and more at the conferences. So it was a very interesting transition, how that took place. So you met him about 2020 through a DJ friend of all contacts, and assisting the first draft of the DAO in so about 2023. Is that when that would have started? About 10 months
Yeah.
ago,
No, it was probably a couple of years ago.
a couple of
It was a
years
couple.
ago.
Yeah, yeah. It was probably a
Okay.
couple. Yeah. I'll have to go back and see exactly the days,
It's
but
okay. It's okay. So you
yeah.
you were assisting with the first draft of the DAO. So like before even the current DAO admin team got involved, because in the white paper, I guess it does mention the DAO right away. So how did that work? They just said, hey, what how do we approach a DAO?
So I think it was purely based on the experience with the ApeCoin DAO and how this
Got
DAO
it.
got created. And I think, I mean, I was probably not the only one that they were talking to, but certainly, well, actually, I might have been. But yeah, it was to learn a little bit the DAO. I think it was also maybe a combination that was I was French, based in the US, worked on the ApeCoin DAO. So I probably was on the short list of the person to talk to, and I think we actually got hired to actually do that first document. So it was actually an actual presentation that was done around that.
I was wondering. I've done quite a few podcast episodes on the Sandbox DAO, and the founding documents, which they were released for SIP number 1 and 2. And it always struck me just how similar ApeCoin DAO was, Sandbox DAO was to the ApeCoin DAO. The way it was, the way it was conducted in the Cayman Islands as a foundation company, and then you had the Constitution and the bylaws and the articles and the tech stack. Um, they were very similar when I was doing my comparison some episodes ago. So we have you to thank for that, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, and I think also the interesting part was Sandbox is actually a voter on the ApeCoin DAO.
Yeah, I heard about that.
Sandbox has a delegation, and they actually voted quite a lot, actually. So not only were they very involved, the obviously a lot of Bored Ape community members had lands on Sandbox. I think BAYC still has a piece of land
They do.
uh,
I just checked the
in
other day. They're
Sandbox.
still there.
Yeah, and one of them, a very big NFT owner as well, is Sandbox. So very close relationships between these two DAOs, and also as far as DAOs to take example of. The ApeCoin DAO is probably one of the most known one. Yatsu was one of the first batch of special council members on the ApeCoin DAO. So that creates also proximity, and so yeah, there was quite a lot of crossover, which is I would say uh, predictable, or at least normal in an industry that still remains small now, and even more so a couple of years ago. So yeah, it's now I think DAOs are going to evolve in different ways. Sandbox DAO has landowner, which
Hmm.
as of today, the ApeCoin DAO doesn't. I think the business cases are also different, but and the purpose also of DAOs, is the purpose of the DAO to give the grants to a community, or is the purpose of the DAO focused on building products? So I think there's quite also a lot of different philosophies between them.
Yeah, and that's taking place right now. I mean, as you can see, the discussions surrounding like what do we even do? Because most of us didn't know what a DAO was until May 28th. I didn't even know what a DAO was. I had to Google it and figure out like, oh, this actually is not a new thing. The DAO started in 2016, and even before that, I listened to a podcast where DAOs started well before that in 2013 ish, as decentralized autonomous corporations, according to um, Aaron from Artifact Labs, and so it has a history long predating even. But here I am. I never heard of a DAO until recently, and neither had the rest of us because we were just gamers. We were gamers and landowners, and then suddenly here's a DAO.
Yeah,
So
and,
it's a learning experience.
and by extension as well, a football team like the Green Bay Packers are the first version of a DAO. They're owned by the community. The same
Oh,
thing with Real Madrid. So if you look at the history of communities reuniting after around a cause, there are examples also outside of technology. Those network effects created um, around a certain belief. So it's actually, once you start going down the rabbit hole, it's actually you start making all those take those weird twists and turns, and to understand how the kind of mindset worked in the past as well of communities uniting.
yeah. I had not considered that. I didn't know Green Bay Packers were owned by the community. So you really became SandFam. It seems like in at least 2022. So when we talked about that ecosystem earlier, you've been a participant at the very least for going on a couple years now. It sounds like.
Yeah, I would say, as far as knowing about the ecosystem and following it, I would say probably very early on.
Mm.
Uh, and then after that, as far as having them as delegate within the ApeCoin DAO, that must have been started 18 months ago. So that interaction, and they actually voted, Sandbox actually voted for me as special counsel. They gave me their
Ah,
vote. They also voted, well, they voted for a few proposals that I put forward. So I would say the same thing with French Apes. There were a couple of delegations that I knew on a personal basis and was able to explain a little bit the vision. And I was fortunate enough that they thought was aligned with the best interest of the community.
yeah. And what would you say? At what point did you either get your first sand token or land?
So land, I never had land in Sandbox.
Hmm.
I never had land in it. As far as and the reason was also I was an advisor on the biggest commercial zone of Decentraland. So I actually was with advisor at Decentraland. So that's which
Right, right. I
also,
gotcha. I gotcha. Yeah,
so it would have been a little weird to also own land if I had a
sure.
art gallery in
Seemed like you're
Decentraland.
playing both fields, both
It,
sides. Yeah,
yeah, and also from a time perspective, it was, so that was the reason why. And then as far as the token is concerned, I was going in and out of the token quite a bit over the years.
God. And I believe they launched it in 2020. So okay, so you've kind of been one of those silent SandFam participants for quite some time. Quite some
Yeah,
time.
I mean, it's silent, but I would say more in real life participant, because I was also at the majority of Sandbox events that were happening, whether it was
Oh, okay, okay.
New York or in Hong Kong or in Paris. So I was often seen within, in real life, and probably among all the protocols that I've interacted with, I probably know the most people at Sandbox. So as far as knowing an organization, I would say probably Sandbox ranks pretty high up there, and that's purely of a proximity as far as being, in my mother city, which is Paris. So that obviously makes it easier. And also over the years, I have the record numbers of panels at Paris Blockchain Week. The last few years, I did 5 of them, and
I
and
watched I watched that you moderating some
yeah,
of those panels.
yeah, and I moderate the gaming panel, which there's always obviously a Sandbox representative on. So I did quite a few panels with Sandbox representative, and usually the gaming and Metaverse panels. I moderate them, or at least I've done in the past, and I might do it this year as well. So yeah, so I was very familiar with their ecosystem.
All right, I think we have fully revealed your background in all of this. Let's get into your your delegation perspective. What would you say is your approach to voting? I looked up your voting history on Snapshot, and it looks like you are mostly yes, but no stranger to voting no's or abstentions when called for, both in the ApeCoin DAO and the Mocha DAO. Also, I saw some Decentraland votes. How did you approach your voting in those environments?
Yeah, so I probably also uh, uh, didn't vote as much as um, in all of them. I certainly follow every single proposals, but obviously being special counsel or involved on some of these projects, I also abstained quite a lot. The other thing that I try to do is each time that I vote, and especially if it's a no, I always fill up the little box with the one
Yeah,
liner.
yeah, me too. That's always a good way to explain something. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think it's pretty it just help, and obviously certainly having also put proposals and AIP, including the ape chain, I really valued people even if they put a no to explain me why it was actually a no. So I always thought it was thankful, it was helpful, and I would say also the approach of voting might be a little bit different from Sandbox, where the proposal process tends to be um, very curated from the beginning, which
Mm,
ultimately gives proposals that have certainly been jumping through a certain number of hoops before being put in front of the community. Other
yeah.
proposals, tend to be just put up there and have maybe less barriers to entry in order to put something up there. Which is neither good or bad. It's just the process. So I certainly feel that certain DAOs, once it gets in front of the delegates, might be in a place where the value add to the project is better understood, or at least the idea is explained in a deeper way. So yeah, so I think it, and then there's other DAOs that I followed pretty closely, including the Arbitrum DAO, which is the technology for the ape chain. The reason why we decided to partner with Arbitrum and thought it was the best fit for the ape chain is also their DAO process and how they do it, and they also have a different way to do it. There's certain barrier to entries in terms of numbers of tokens that you must have in order to place bids. So
Temperature checks
that's
and yeah, I read a little bit of their constitution.
temperature checks. You have some, it doesn't go to snapshot directly. So there's like a few. There's also a few other things, and also just the size of their community, which is much bigger, and their big delegates was actually significantly big, and the level also of these delegates. I mean, I had the chance to meet all of them. I mean, we're talking about seasoned crypto and technology experts who are giving their thoughts, and often their proposals are highly technical from the get-go. So
Mm.
it's very hard to just say yes or no on a lot of their proposal. You need to really spend the time and understand. And there's a reason why they pay their delegates, is because it's actually a full-time job to actually having a very a very definite answer about judging a technology is extremely difficult. I mean, certainly to judge the Arbitrum technology, I mean, the teams, the engineering team, and the discussion that they had were extremely, extremely high caliber. So it wasn't only a popularity contest where it tends, DAO tends to go in that direction, but also a highly technical, analysis as well. So I think it's the combination of both that usually creates, the real value add in these ecosystems.
And what sort of voting strategy or perspective do you bring now to the Sandbox DAO? You're not special counsel on the Sandbox DAO, which kind of frees you of that obligation or conflict of interest, but do you still have a code of conduct that you've agreed to within the Sandbox DAO as a delegate? How now do you plan on approaching voting?
Yeah, so yeah, we do have to sign a code of conduct in order to onboard as a delegate, and then the voting, which is going to be the experiment that I'm excited about, is how do I get representative of three different continents agree on a vote, and that's kind of like the internal challenge that actually I'm putting together, and one of the important aspects of taking over that role of delegate was for me to really talk about a number of individuals who wants to delegate tokens to this group, to this delegation, but also want to get involved. And if it wasn't for them excited to be part of it, it wouldn't be something that I wouldn't taking as a challenge. I think that having a group of people representing their own communities, and for all of us aligning on the decision making process, it's going to be so. The votes on that delegation, I suspect, are not going to be me deciding, yes or no.
Ah, okay.
Um, I might press the button at the end. But what is important to me is that making a unanimous decision towards the cohorts of individuals that I'm talking to, and for me, that concept of East meets West delegation, I wouldn't want the East or the West to feel unheard of it, and just be the East delegation, for
Got
example.
it.
So
Got it.
yeah, so that would be the philosophy around it.
That's fascinating. I don't think I've heard that sort of approach yet. So while you may press the button, you're really just a reflection of the East meets West delegation as it decides, and ideally unanimously, that which way they want to vote on each proposal.
Yeah, and I think also it's the other part. What I was very keen on is not doing it as a DAO within the DAO, and based on,
Okay.
the number of NFTs that each of us has, or the numbers of token, etc. But really to having more of a dialogue type approach, and making decisions not based on the voting power of an individuals, but based on their thought process, which I think makes it quite interesting, because it's gonna quickly what quickly is going to come out is, can we work together or not, and at which moment, so it's either going to be the biggest success story,
Or the
uh,
biggest failure.
or the biggest
Or
failure.
somewhere in between.
It,
Oh, but
it's
there's
like,
that entrepreneurial spirit coming out again.
well, yeah, I mean, it's literally going to be like having roommates. Either we're going to become best
Mhm.
friends, or either somebody's going to leave pretty quickly. So we'll see which way it goes.
Yeah. I'm really fascinated now. I think that's a very unique approach. I'd like to hmm, as I consider who I myself want to delegate to, this is an interesting approach, an interesting cause. How interesting. So how do you foresee people participating in the East meets West delegation? How do you see them having that dialogue to where you end up clicking the button?
Yeah, so I think the way that I want to position myself is that the clicking of the button is so obvious, then it's not
Mhm.
even a debate. And it's almost like, it's almost like, I feel, and also maybe because a few of the members are really well experienced. I feel that the answer to the exam should pop up directly. And if we don't all have the same answer,
Mhm.
then understanding what we missed. So I think that's where we're envisioned to be. If there's major discrepancies or thought process, then I'm going to be curious to know why I didn't have the same analysis, and where I went wrong, or where they went wrong. So
Yeah.
I think pretty quickly we should get to a consensus, or at least that's my hope.
Yeah. Well, you're putting in the time right now to ensure that it does end up being successful. So I think we talked about through uh, your involvement in other DAOs, not just ApeCoin DAO, but BLIFE protocol, and your connection to Yatsu and Domo, who's the creator of BRC20, and their aim to become the largest utility in the ecosystem of Bitcoin blockchain. We talked about your former special counsel role, where you were elected in January 2024, and you stepped down in October 2024 after you You met the aims that you were after with the ApeCoin, ApeChain, and ApeStake. Was there anything else that you wanted to note on your time as special counsel in the ApeCoin DAO?
I mean, there was ApeCoin DAO, but also I was special counsel on the Horizon DAO, the Zen token, which was one of the
Oh, right, Zen token.
2017 original OG tokens, one of the first one with a grayscale vehicle, with a very important community in Korea mostly, and a token that that was listed very early on in all the major exchanges. So it was really the founding grounds of a lot of projects. And also throughout the special counsel position, I went from being at the foundation level of the Horizon. Of the Horizon Foundation to then special counsel of the Horizon DAO. So also kind of lived that transition between let's call it, for lack of a better term, centralized to decentralized,
Mm,
while being a special counsel. So I think that that was probably a very interesting experience. We saw that on the case of ApeCoin, it started as a DAO on day one. In the Sandbox, the special counsel came in when Sandbox became a DAO. But in that case, we kind of, fixed the plane while we were in it. So I think that in terms of transition times, that was actually the most interesting one as far as being it. And I also kind of build a little bit the DAO from a special counsel standpoint, and to this point, I would say that in terms of healthiness of DAOs, instead of agreements of special council member, in terms of international element, I think that all this actually were 7 DAO members. The 7 members are actually in all a different country. We don't have any 2 special council member in the same country. We have um, 2 out of the council out of the 7 are women. So I know it doesn't sound much, 2 out of 7, but I haven't seen yet another special counsel that had 2 women as part of it. I can't recall any disagreement as far as the DAO, to the point of an unhealthy disagreement. There's certainly conversation,
mhm,
um, and also in terms of managing budgets, in a very almost being addicted to be under budget. Maybe even that maybe that's a flaw, actually, to be under budget over time. So I think if there was an organizations ranking DAOs and actually putting notes, I think it would rank extremely high as far as that setup of doing it. So yeah, so that was something that I think should be highlighted as well.
and that was, Horizon Global.
Yeah.
Hmm. I don't think I'm very familiar with them. I'll have to go look them up now after this. The only reason I gained any familiarity with them was when I was looking into your profile, and I saw that you were a special counsel for both BLIFE and Horizon. And are you still, special counsel?
Yep.
Okay,
Yeah, I'm still
got it.
special counsel on Horizon. So it's the Zen tokens, and they're working also on a new token called ZK Verify,
Got it.
which is the next projects being developed by Horizon Labs.
Okay. All right. And I think we talked about ApeCoin and ApeCoin DAO and ApeChain and ApeStake. And let's I think from your when you discussed in your delegate description connecting the TSP DAO to different Web3 communities. So you're not just talking about Horizon or ApeCoin DAO. Are there other Web3 communities that you'd like to connect the DAO to?
Um, so one of the so often, there's two ways to answer this. The first one is that um, what I've been advising a lot of projects, or one of the thing that a lot of projects had in common is that they were in gaming. And I think that I not only look at the Web3 communities, but I also look at the gaming community. So, for example, right now in Manila, it's a gaming conference that I'm at. So I would say that we have gaming, whether it's from Web2 or Web3. I've spent time at Gamescom in Germany, about the largest Web2 conference in the space. The first year that I went there, I counted 3 booths out of 800 that had the term Web3 in it. Today, we're almost 10 times the amount. So I've seen the evolution of slowly Web2 gaming getting
Hmm.
into Web3, or maybe it's Web3 gaming, spending time inside of Web2. But I think that the gaming community overall is a massive opportunity in the space. In fact, one of the companies that I was advising, Exola, is and was the largest payment processor within gaming. They're the PayPal of gaming. So I got very familiar to the gaming space in general. Um, I think also the BLIFE token, which I advise and I'm the special counsel of, with Yatsu and others, they came out of a gaming company, the second largest gaming company of Animoca, which is the ex team of Assassin's Creed, the Ubisoft game. They're the ones who are behind the BLIFE token. So very much the DNA of that organization is gaming. Now it's gaming building on top of Bitcoin, but gaming is something that obviously they are known for, and the reason why they got acquired by Animoca. So I think overall, when I think about community, is not only within the community that I was involved with in special counsel, but it's a broader space out there when it relates to gaming. And I think that's where I'm excited about the onboarding element.
Hmm. Okay. I wasn't tracking that angle at all until you just said that. That's an interesting connection. There's a lot of things happening in the gaming space, even Web3 gaming space, even outside of the sandbox, where you see potential opportunities there to connect the communities.
Yeah, and I'm lucky that this year one of the projects that I've been advising, BlockLords, with the Lords token, is the number one game on Base, and they got a Coinbase listing on day one. So for a pure game to get a day one Coinbase listing and trending number one on Base is unheard of. To the point that the CEO of Coinbase uses the BlockLords as on their presentations as one of the success stories within the space.
I see. Huh. And you have ideas for how that partnership might be between the DAO and the communities or the sandbox?
Yeah, so currently they have a partnership with Mochaverse. So they did
Ah,
a token drop to all Mocha holders. But I do suspect that there's potentials to have more synergies than just being involved with one DAO.
got it. Makes sense. And when you spoke later in your description, when you spoke about the fresh opportunities that you envision, that's also what you're speaking to.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Yeah. And real world use cases. What were some examples of those real world use cases, or did we just go over them with BlockLords, Exola, uh, BLIFE, and so on?
I think the other interesting thing about Sandbox and the company and the game, and less about the DAO, is that they're probably one of the project with the most partnerships of
Oh my
any.
gosh, they have so many partners.
Yeah, I think over 400 or
Yep.
plus.
And
Um, I was I was on the Sandbox booth at Hong Kong Gen 3 Summit, and they had a partnership with that lollipop company called Chupa Chups. So I even said, well, why there's so many lollipops here? Like, is that this is well, they're our new partners. We're doing a game with them. So even from NFT projects to supermarket chains, to professional teams, to music labels and lollipops. So I think in terms of real cases, Sandbox already ranks, as number one. And also what I would like, and maybe I shouldn't chew too many things on day one. I think the East meets West is already a good topic, but also having these brands have a delegation, or certainly delegating to some of the delegation. I think that they should be part of the decision-making process of the DAO. The largest delegation right now of ApeCoin is Made by Apes, who represents
yeah.
hundreds of companies within the space. I think that there should be something similar with Sandbox. They have a huge number of companies, and I think that would also, at least from a learning process, would be interesting to have them being on board. And I believe that if a company signs up, having them voting as well, maybe could be something. I wouldn't say it's a requirement, but I would say it would be a fun fact for them to know of.
Yeah. That's fascinating. I'm aware of Made by Apes and how uh, the business end of the ApeCoin DAO, they've come together and trying to make quorum to within their own delegation to vote. I think they have like 6 million voting power, so quite a substantial amount presence within the ApeCoin DAO. Yeah, that's something that could happen here. What kind of delegate would you like to be known as? So filling in the blank of Airvey is blank.
Well, I think it would be an
Vey.
open-minded delegate when it relates to building an international cohort, and also somebody who hears and listens to the different members of the delegation.
Yeah, nah, I think that's quite clear. Quite clear. All right. So Hervé, what sort of sips would you say that you don't support?
Um, I think it's too early to say. I feel that my expectation is that because of the process of the Sandbox DAO, that once SIPs arrives in front of the delegates, that they will be in a place that would be very well thought through. So I suspect that this might be the case. And I feel as well that um, there's going to be inspirations taking from the gaming world, the Web3 world, the landowner, the token owner. So it would be interesting to see, where the community, what's their number one focus today? Because already, speaking to landowner, they have certain ideas in mind that might not be the same ideas of gamers, that might not have other ideas of token holders. So I'm curious to see where that first batch of SIPs will bring us.
Yeah. Yeah, there it's gonna be interesting. So when I did my podcast episode on the sandbox ecosystem, it's about an hour, I think hour long, and that was just an introduction. And that was me putting pen to paper for here are the different sectors that I know of, and I went a little bit through it in the beginning, but that ecosystem that I ended up org charting out, it's big. It's really, really big. You don't just have token holders. You have many different types of participants in the ecosystem. Everyone from land brokers who don't own anything and they just broker deals to major landowners. Um, you've got, oh my gosh, you have a lot of different interest groups with a lot of different with things that are important to them. So that's why I'm very interested to see how your East meets West delegation takes a stance on that, because not only do you have the different types of SandFam people, but now you have different cultures and different within different types of SandFam. That's a tough challenge. That's gonna be
Yeah,
tough.
and to build on that, I mean, it's 10 p.m. right now in Manila. Tomorrow morning, my 9 a.m. breakfast is with an entire interior designer, a Filipino interior designer who created a built a studio for Sandbox. So he's not only he's not a broker, he's a studio owner creating experiences on top of land. So just to build on what you're saying.
Wow. I'm really fascinated, Hervé, how you're going to bring together the East and the West. I was just talking about that with another delegate, old one, and I also just interviewed um last night. Oh man, how time flies. Uh, but I just interviewed a number of delegates, old one especially, where speaking about how different. Oh, it was Crypto Mo, so also known as MoFat, one of your fellow delegates, and um, OG Shakespeare just came in with 17 people saying hello, Hervé, from another channel. So everyone we're currently interviewing Airvey, one of the 12 delegates that was just approved, and he's looking to create an East meets West delegation to bring together the three different continents, Asia, Americas, and Europe, to to bring a consensus to where all he has to do is just really reflect the will of the East meets West delegation and come to that unanimous decision. So man, that that's so fascinating that how both Mofat said the same thing as did old one, speaking of how different even between Korean and Chinese uh, communities are. It's you. I can see how this being one of the final things you want to do in a DAO. I'm interested to see how you solve this problem. I think it's going to turn out to be a template that we use because that's one of the things in the SandFam community that's been a barrier, a challenge for us is the different cultures, and us not being able to really come together yet because it's difficult for us to communicate. And yeah, so maybe this is one of the ways in which we solve that issue. So, what would you say as a SandFam voter? What type of SandFam voter best fits your delegation style in the East meets West strategy?
Yeah, I think it's a couple of things. The first one, I want people who like that philosophy about it, about that reuniting, having somebody who speaks French to talk to the French Sandbox team, understands the local markets, and bridge the gap between the two of them, which is something that I was doing at the LVMH based on the US, importing French products to the US market. So I had a little bit of training on this, and I feel it's a cut and paste within a different industry. And I think also I want people to have fun within that delegations. I want people who are there because they want to have that fun aspects. Also, I want it to be an enjoyable experience. I want it to be an experience not only online, but also in real life. You were mentioning Old Juan. I had a great time with him in Hong Kong. We
Oh,
spent time
nice.
together. Yeah, we were, very transparent about our delegations, our objectives, what we wanted to do. We spent time together. I don't want to create those delegations when it's a rivalry and I'm going to vote at the last second to outbid you
Yeah.
type of culture. I want it to be very transparent from day one, And I think that even he has leading another delegation. I feel that we will both be working for the greater good and for the DAO in general. And I feel not only is going to be a very positive working relationship within the delegation, but also I hope a very positive experience with other delegations as well. So yeah, I'm very excited about that.
Well said. Well said. Not a competition. It's an opportunity to cooperate. And I think we already spoke on this, the delegation process. So you were asked to by the Sandbox team. And so did you also go through the application and the interview process? Okay,
Yeah,
got it.
I've done. I went through all of it.
And then how were you notified that you became a delegate?
Uh, I think it was an email. I think
Okay.
they emailed me and saying that my profile was approved.
And now that I didn't know that there was a $2 million dollar, not dollar, 2 million voting power gift that would be bestowed. I think it's a very fascinating way to eliminate the quorum problem, and I think most people probably would agree that the 2 million VP split among 12 now is a very interesting way to take out off the voting power from one sandbox wallet now to spread among the delegates. Does that change either the weight you feel of voting or the process by which you want to vote?
Um, I think, well, there's two things. The interesting part is that when you look at the large wallets of most of the DAOs, most of them were towards airdrops, actually.
Yeah. Okay.
So, having that transition of a DAO midway, I feel that, kickstarting, everybody in an equal way is actually the right way for people to really think about the SIPs and not be on the road trying to convince delegates to or convince token holders to delegate their tokens. So that gives people being part of the process from day one. And after that, over time, we'll see how this evolves. Are people going to have larger delegations? Are they going to have smaller ones? Are they going to feel really vested in the project or not? So it's DAOs are always evolving, so we'll see how the delegations evolves as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm fascinated by that. How the delegations are going to evolve. Some delegates have already mentioned that they feel a weight on their shoulders or they feel a heavier responsibility when it comes to voting. Others say it's not going to change the way I vote. I'm going to vote with the same principles, and how each delegate kind of decides for themselves what they want to do with that voting power. I'm really interested to see how that works within the ecosystem. Have you had to sign any additional agreements outside of the code of conduct?
No, I believe the code of conduct was the only one.
Okay. Yep, and that's a pretty consistent answer across the board. And so, Hervé, we've talked through so much, and your history, how you want to approach the delegation process, building an east meets west mentality across three continents, how the what SIPs you do and don't support, and having an open mind to see what the different community interests where it lies. And so we just went through all of the questions I want to hit for a delegation. There was one final thing I want to go over with you if you have the time. Something that I saw as I was reading through the articles about you, watching Crypto Banter and YPO Art Network. Do you have the time to go through it?
Sure.
So here's something that I found was fascinating as I was watching your interviews and articles was you I was surprised to see just how early on you mentioned the metaverse. And I guess less surprising now that I understand your connection and how early you went into Decentraland. But what struck me was that, like in the Coin Telegraph article, where by Elias, you talked about there are blue chips in metaverse land, and like traditional real estate, it will depend on the income generated with it. Later on in the article, you talk about how you're passionate on building on top, or Elias, yeah, passionate on building on top of Bitcoin with BRC20s and ordinals. And when you're speaking with Crypto Banter, you talked about you think that the long term vision is seeing the virtual reality and the metaverse um, is where people will be spending a lot of time. And then in YPO Art Network, you talked about being interested in art in the metaverse, and then you went into how there are the two different types of asset classes on the non fungible, one being virtual real estate, and how having that virtual gallery to show virtual art, you need virtual real estate to accomplish that. But I start seeing a common thread of how you how your position is that virtual reality, virtual real estate is where a lot of people will be spending time in the future. And also, I read your 2019 article, or the 13 reasons to buy Bitcoin. Uh, and can you tell me more about why that's such a common thread, or what you see there, to where in almost every video I've seen, and more than that, you mention the metaverse and its importance in the long term?
Yeah, I think it touches something that I actually recently understood why. And I understood it when I did. So I did the one-on-one interview of Yatsu on the at Paris Blockchain Week on the
Mm,
main stage. And one of the questions that I asked him is, why among the 540 companies that are part of the portfolio of Animoca, what are the two largest subsidiaries, Sandbox and Darewise, are both French companies? It feels that the odds are very low that your two biggest companies among 540 are both the same nationality from the same city with the same type of founder with the same pedigree. And he said something very interesting, which I think hit the nail on the head. He said, you know, French people have the capacity to imagine things that don't exist. That's why they're the leader in luxury. The reason why France is the home of luxury is we understand that the perceived value, that a bottle of Dom Perignon champagne is worth $300 because of the value, the romanticism that is created around it. And I
wow.
think that the reason why my transition from, often people are surprised. It says, well, you went from physical good to virtual goods. And thinking about it, it's the exact same thing. You know, when you work in luxury goods, you know, you have your cost, but the value of the consumer is completely different. In fact, um, the main or the only don'ts when you work in a luxury goods company is talking about the price, because if you talk about the price, that means you did something wrong before. The price shouldn't be an issue because you should have created so much value around it. And when
Is
we
that why
look,
there's no prices attached to, like you go into an Hermé bag to get in the store? I did not realize that.
so when you go to Hermes and your goal going in is not to know the price, is to get on the wait list and
Yeah.
see how deep you are on the wait list. The price doesn't matter. When you go to a Louis Vuitton stores all over the world, you ask for the price of the wallets. They have to unwrap it and look
Mm-hmm.
inside the little tag that says, you know, $800 for the wallet, and no discounts, no negotiations. And you know, you're lucky if that's the only wallet that is left in the store to actually take it. But what I realized through that, it was that it is actually The reason why um, the founder of LVMH became the two richest, and that's also a little known fact. The two richest people in the world last year, men and women, were both French, and they were both creating luxury goods. So it shows that the cost and the perception is completely different. And I think the reason why I understood, you know, the $1 million NFT that goes for 69 million
Mm-hmm.
is because I felt it was the exact same thing in the real world. That when you go to the Louis Vuitton Museum in Paris, you have Monet paintings all over that are all worth $100 million. But you don't say, well, it's a piece of wood with, a few paintbrushes. You understand that this is the value around it. So I think that's why the transition was kind of seamless. I think that's why the transition was, hey, I understand it solve a problem, and the value of Bitcoin is going to go up, because I looked at it more about the size of the problem that it's solving, and I never put a cap to it. Um, and yeah, and I think that's the case of a lot of the French founders of these companies, who are doing well in Web3, is that they understand that the cost and the perceived value.
I'm I think I'm just now grappling with connecting the dots in my own brain right now, processing. I don't think I've ever quite thought of it that way. You looked at the size of the problem and you never put a cap to it. I think that's probably similar to how I got into crypto as well. When I saw Bitcoin, I saw the size of the problem. The unbanked, the debanked, the thing that you saw with your mother in Venezuela, trying to get her some money and having the issue of somewhat, it's called destabilized, but not as stable of an environment to where it made it challenging. And how you solved that in an afternoon, sending her Bitcoin instead. the size
Yeah,
the
a-
size of the
a-
problem and not putting a cap to it.
and I think it relates also to tokens. Um, you know, we say, is it more important for a token to have a utility or a community? And the reality, if your token doesn't have an actual utility, that means it doesn't have any cap to it. So that's why we see Doge coming to $100 billion market cap without a utility, or rather a different utility that's around fund and cult and etc., rather than some other projects that have a utility and that are valued like a traditional tech business at lower multiples. So I think that element, what I saw when you sell luxury goods, is actually the exact same mindset. We don't think about a Louis Vuitton bag, about the price of the leather. We think about what is the joy that it will bring me by having it.
Mm.
I will end with this. We were one time I was with colleagues, and we were speaking to people about selling bottles in restaurant for a very high amount, and we asked them, well, how are you able to sell bottles for 10 times the multiple? And the person said, we don't negotiate with good times. And I think that what they're
Very good.
selling, the value of the bottle is the value of good times, and often that can be priceless.
I think that's a great place to end. Thank you for exploring that topic with me. I I walked away from that with, and we don't negotiate with good times. That's a good one. That's a good one. But seeing the size of the problem without a cap, I think that is the right way to connect those dots. Hervé, is there anything you'd like to part with or say to the SandFam community before we end today?
No, that was amazing. Thank you so much for having me. That it's been an hour and a half, and it felt like it just flew by. I'm very excited about embarking with that delegations, and not only I hope to meet everybody on Metaverse, but also meet everybody in real life. So thank you again for having me.
Yeah, likewise. Likewise. The pleasure was mine. Something I wanted to end with on our note here was there are places which SamFam gathers, and I'll send this to you as well as a message. But you know of Discord and the DAO discussion channel, the Sandbox DAO forums. There's Twitter, of course, and YouTube is basically Sandbox DAO's YouTube, mine, and then SandFam Cafe. That's been a long-standing one by Pickaxe Master. But where people gather during the week is on Mondays. Mochaverse Hall has a space they do on Saturdays, Bulls on the Block, which you're probably familiar with as a delegation, one of the OG delegations for ApeCoin. Also, many SandFam gather there on Saturdays. Monday through Friday, I'm sure you're familiar with Coffee with Captain. You've heard of, uh, so they sometimes speak about SandFam, and I suppose your connection there will also make a pretty nice introduction if you're able to speak there. And then whale members, one of the largest landowners within Sandbox is whale members, and they have natively digital Twitter Space on Tuesdays. So something where you can also kind of advocate for the East West delegation, where SandFam will typically gather in those places. I think they would really, I think many of them would enjoy and benefit from hearing what you're trying to accomplish, and then join you in that endeavor. So it's something I wanted to briefly touch on before we end here. Uh, Thank you for your time. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciated speaking with you. And everyone, this is Hervé Larren. He is had storied history across multiple Web3 and Web2, everything from Louis Vuitton to ApeCoin DAO Special Counsel, uh, one of the OG Bitcoin miners when it all kicked off. This grand experiment here in Web3, looking to create an East meets West delegation across the three continents of Europe, Asia, and the Americas to come to a unanimous decision where dialogue is fruitful, positive, and all he has to do is just reflect the will of the delegation because we've all arrived at a coordinated and well synced decision. Hervé, thank you for your time. Appreciate it
Thank you
very
so
much.
much. Thank you.
All right, Sam Fam, we're out.